Magnum TA here, and you're listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. I'm Dean Hill, see you at ringside.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And honestly, Jared, today, this should be a holiday, I think. Today, we just had Greg Gagne, and we've had Steve on for PowerTown and Kayla at Relativity. Y'all are the best. Thank you so much. But this right here, I mean, if the podcast were to end, obviously that would be not fun, but it could, and we would have accomplished something with this because we've got Magnum TA on the show today. What do you think about that?
Man, when I think about our childhood and getting into wrestling, I think of, Jim Crockett Promotions and watching, some of our favorites at the time. We were babyface guys. So we like the Rock and Roll Express. We like the Road Warriors. We liked Magnum and Dusty Rhodes. I mean, it's just amazing to get to talk to a childhood hero like this that you don't think something like this could ever happen, but it is happening for us today.
There are some things that I cannot wait to ask him. There's going to be some fun stuff. The first thing I think you'll hear in this one that you maybe didn't hear in Greg, because with Greg, honestly, when you hear Greg talk, it's like you hear Vern. Their voice is so similar to me. Mm. And with Magnum, his voice is just his voice. It's not Dusty's. It's not Rick's. It's Magnum. And I can't wait to talk to him just about his promos, man, because, his promos were fiery, like a Southern preacher, Yeah.
You know who he reminded me of, like who his promos remind me of in a way?
Who's that?
Is like, he's a babyface version of Jake the Snake Robert promos a little bit in a way. I don't know. It always reminded me of that, the way they look into the camera. So not that they sounded the same, but the way they delivered them or something like that.
Okay, I can see that. They're making eye contact with the listener.
Yeah, a ton of eye contact, and like you feel like they're like peering into your soul a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, can you imagine being one of Magnum's kids and they get in trouble? Like he's cutting a promo on him and they're just like, sorry, Dad, I'll never do that again. I promise. Because our dad can cut a promo,
Yeah.
So
it's a prerequisite of being a dad, right?
Yeah, I think it is. I need to figure that out. Actually, I think it would help some things out with me and Cash, but no, I'm just kidding. But with Magnum, he obviously had that. It was like a stern but strong but passionate but powerful. Obviously, we've heard his promos a million times, and there's he was standing beside Dusty, who was like this cool, suave, like, I don't know, not cool.
Muhammad Ali type promo, but
very rapping kind of deal. He was a Muhammad Ali. He had a rap about him almost. And with Magnum, it was smart of Magnum to just be himself because it came across as different than Dusty.
Absolutely.
Dusty's like this, Daddy, yeah, Daddy. And then Magnum is like, listen, it's like super straight ahead, awesome, powerful. His tone kind of keeps at an even keel, but not monotone. It reaches a level and it stays there, but it's like a punch to the face, So yeah. Anyway, they're babyface promos that we love. Of course, the Road Warrior. Wow, and
tell him, Hulk.
Yeah, tell him, Hulk. And then Sting, of course, had a great one. His was a little more animated. Dusty, of course, but Daddy. And then those great Rock and Roll Express. I feel like kind of Ricky's is similar to Magnum's at a level. Robert always talk like this. Yeah. Ricky, hey, tell him, Ricky. Yeah. And he's like, listen, Skew. Look at Chucky, Tennessee, Skew. But Magnum, he just had that powerful voice. he had a good voice. Obviously a good promo has to have a good voice behind it. So, and plus he looked cool. I mean, he was a badass, but he also looked cool. Like the ladies wanted to be with him and the men wanted to be him. And I think that's the trick.
You go. Perfect statement.
Yeah, because that's the perfect way to be a good baby face, especially in the South, is, if you've got that, then you've got him, So, anyway, we want to thank you all for listening to the Cousin Condrey episode, to the Greg Gagne episode. We've got some Jablonski is pissed off. That's a new segment we're going to be dropping. It'll be a separate little show that we drop. It's not going to be on a different feed. It's just going to be its own thing, little 15-minute clips about Jablonski being pissed off. We can't wait for you to hear the first one. It's going to be a lot of fun. We hope y'all enjoy those. Those are there for you to enjoy. Thank you, Mike, for being a part of us and helping out the show with that. But also, with Kayla, Steve, everybody at PowerTown, at Relativity, thank you all so much for hooking us up with Greg. And now it's leading into this one with Magnum TA. So instead of me talking, which I know y'all get probably tired of hearing me talk, let's talk to Magnum.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis. We're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. And I can't tell you, I honestly can't say this with a straight face. I cannot tell you that I ever thought I would be talking to this gentleman on this show, because we had a dream for this podcast, my brother and I, that we would get to talk to some wrestlers, get to talk about wrestling and have a blast. But to be able to talk to one of your childhood heroes is more than I could ever have imagined. And honestly, if this podcast were to stop tomorrow, I would be okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome to you, in my opinion, the United States heavyweight champion, Magnum TA. Magnum, welcome to the show, my friend.
Man, what an intro. I don't know if I can follow that.
I'm sure you'll do okay. Thank you so much for coming on, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just great. 63 years old, twins, boy-girl twins in the 9th grade in high school, full-time employed in the telecom industry, and this little thing called PowerTown going on in the background. So I've got more balls in the air than a man of my age and distinction should have.
I mean, you know what? Hey, if there's anybody that can do it, it's the great Magnum TA. So, we believe in you, Magnum. We know you got this, especially about the PowerTown, but we want to get to that in just a little bit, because obviously, like I said, the early 80s to the mid 80s, you were a staple to us. I mean, honestly, we felt you through the TV. You were one of those performers like Dusty Rhodes, like Ric Flair, like all the greats that you could feel through the TV. Now, we're mid-Atlantic kids. We grew up in southwestern Virginia, really close to Bristol, in a town called Lebanon, Virginia. And we grew up on you guys. You all were our wrestling. Bob Caudle was our voice, and Magnum and Dusty were our heroes. So I guess let's start with that. I know you had a great career before then, but let me ask you this. What is something that Dusty told you at the start that you still hold on to this day? Is there something that he said to you that you always will remember? Well,
I'll always remember the call that I got in the middle of the night in 1984, as when I was working for Bill Watts, and I was the North American heavyweight champion over there, and territory was on fire. And I get a call in the middle of the night, him introducing me to Jim Crockett.
Yeah.
And them laying out this blueprint for me about what they envisioned and what they wanted to do with me, and the opportunity that they were going to give me that is just unheralded. I mean, the push of a lifetime, as we call it in the business.
Right.
And I'll never forget that moment, because though I had been working for about a year and a half in the main event mainstream, for Mid-South, having the opportunity to come to work for the Crockett's, and then jumping on a national platform rather than a regional platform was something that right out of a storybook, because I graduated high school in 1977, won state championship, and in 1985 I'm wrestling Ric Flair for the world's heavyweight title in front of a sold-out Norfolk Scope Coliseum with both sets of grandparents up in the stands and my mom and dad. I mean, what fantasy novel does something like that happen in that short period of time?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a turnaround time for sure. I mean, it almost makes me think of, because I'm trying to think of what I was doing at that time versus that. I mean, you were a man quick, and I assume, part of your raising led you to that, but what got you ready for that moment, do you think?
I think, honestly, that the foundations from amateur wrestling, which was my passion, which I lived, breathed, and died from the time I was in the 9th grade through my senior year, just put a work ethic in me and a goal-setting mentality in me that, had me believe that anything I set my mind to and worked hard enough for was achievable. And so when I broke in the wrestling world, into the pro wrestling ranks, I mean, my immediate goal in my mind was not that I just wanted to figure this thing out, as I wanted to be the world's heavyweight champion one day. And I mean, I thought this week one. So I had very high ambitions for myself when I didn't know, a wrist lock from a wristwatch. So, but again, I had come from that foundation of a kid that in the 8th grade was laying on a gym floor, couldn't do one push-up, and went on to be the state champion and outstanding wrestler in the state tournament in 1977. So I mean, I believe the impossible was possible if you were willing to make the sacrifices and put in the work to achieve those goals.
Yeah, that's a playbook right there of how you do that. If you have the determination, and I don't think anybody would ever question Magnum's determination. So, Jared,
I was just going to ask you, I've read some about the origin of your name with your ring name, and there is the resemblance, people say, to Tom Selleck and the Magnum TA character. And then I read that Andre actually helped you with the name, like told you to add.
No, it was totally Andre. So
okay.
So I meet Andre the Giant in 1980 again.
Wow. Yeah.
Right off the bat, I broke in 1980. About 2 weeks after being in the business, Andre comes in the territory, and I had the biggest car. So the guy with the biggest car toted the Giant around. So I had that great big jolly fellow in the front of my Olds 98 diesel. And we spent a great deal of time together for 2 solid weeks, and I just broke in, and then I passed cross again a little over 2 years later, and I'm now in Championship Wrestling of Florida, and I've come light years in that 2 short years from where I was when I just started to what he saw of me then. And back then I wore, like, I had these tailor-made Hawaiian shirts that I wore, and I had shorter hair, and it still was blonde, but it was shorter than it ended up being, and I could see where you would see that comparison. And Andre was sitting there. We were eating at a place called Fat Man's Barbecue down there somewhere around Tampa, and about 3 a.m, and he said, "You're ready for a break." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "All you need is a handle." He called it like the CB handles. You need a handle. You need a name. And he came up with the Magnum TA right there sitting at breakfast. He said, "You need to be Magnum TA, like Magnum PI." And I said, "That sounds great." So he was going back to New York for Vince Sr., and the plan was he was going up there and tell Vince about me, and they were going to bring me in to WWF. So fate being as it is, they also, WWE had reached out and talked to Paul Orndorff, and he leaves Mid-South unexpectedly goes to New York. That was a top spot. Ernie Ladd was the booker. He too had been watching me because he came in and out of the Tampa territory, and he calls me again in the middle of the night. I think all big deals like that happen in the middle of the night. And he says, "Kid," he said, "I got the opportunity of a lifetime for you, Paul. Paul's left with spots open and is yours if you want it." So before Andre could pull the trigger, Bill's organization reached out to me, and I ended up going left instead of straight north, and that's how it all happened.
So he come to you, he say, "Hello, Magnum." I'm just kidding. Sorry, that's my Andre accent.
Yeah, but well, we won't hang you for that. It's okay.
so obviously, okay. If you had it to do over again, would you have gone right on that, or were you preferring the left still?
Well, at the time, it was the correct thing to do, because though Andre had given me the handle, I didn't know what to do with the handle. I didn't know what that meant. Okay,
sure.
So I'd been working mid-card matches with in Championship Wrestling in Florida, predominantly in tag teams, and Scott McGee and I and Brad Armstrong and I were the global tag team champions there, like a total of 4 or 5 times together. And we were going out there having long matches every night with guys like the Royal Kangaroos and, putting a lot of ring time in. So I had got a lot of experience, but working main event and then also starting a new persona that you're basically inventing from thin air was the deal. So what happened, I go and, I got this look and I got this name, and they don't really know what to do with me. And I don't really know exactly what to do to get myself where I need to be either. So for 6 months, they're giving me a push, but it's not like really, it's kind of floundering all over the place. One week they say, "Hey, I think you should wear 3-piece suits." So I did that. I'm comfortable in that. And then they said, "Hey, how about, more like, punk rock clothes?" So I tried that, and that wasn't working.
Right.
So I've been there 6 months, just kind of, I'm having great matches with like Butch Reed and guys they've got there that, some great talent, and tagged with Jim Duggan. We were the tag team champions there for a little while, but again, wasn't really getting any real direction. So Ernie comes to me and says, "Kid, this really isn't working out quite right, like we were thinking." I said, "Hey, it's all good." And I said, I've had a great time. I said, I called Dusty up, and Dusty said, "Well," he said, they don't know, they're not using you right. And Dusty knew that I rode motorcycles. So I'd ridden bikes since I was 17 years old. And so he said, "Go get you a Harley." And he said, "Well, we're going to come down here and we're going to bring you in and make you the Magnum TA, like the lone wolf, the motorcycle, riding, mysterious, kind of guy."
Yeah.
And so I said, "Oh yeah, I'm feeling that. I could feel that." So I go down, and I haven't left yet, so I'm still working. And so I'm wrestling in Baton Rouge, and I go down to Baton Rouge Harley Davidson. Jim Duggan drives me down. I pick up, buy a brand new Harley Davidson, buy me a motorcycle jacket, and I ride that to the town. Well, man, I drive that into the town on the way to the matches. The people are buzzing. Everybody's going crazy. I walk into the dressing room with that leather jacket on. The whole room looks at me differently. Everything pivoted and changed that instant. And then Bill sees me in the whole get up and the deal. And he said, "Man, that's crazy." And I said, "Yeah, well," I said, "I'm going down to Florida." He said, "Oh, no, you're not going down to Florida." So Bill Dundee came in, took over the book, and they started letting me be me and let me, develop my persona based on what I was comfortable in, my own skid, which was this biker-ish, kind of lone wolfish type, actually a heel babyface kind of guy. Somebody that would fight from the bottom up, people could cheer for, but somebody was just as happy in a brawling match as like a Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, arm drag, technical kind of wrestling match. And I was very comfortable in that role. And But it took 6 months to figure that out. So had I gone to New York without it figured out, it wouldn't have made the right impression then. So it was the exact right move to have gone to work for Mid-South.
Yeah, definitely.
What, Magnum, what do you think about how would you describe like the difference between like travel in Mid-South versus like Mid-Atlantic territories?
Well, when I first got to Mid-Atlantic, before we, blew the roof off the place and it, went on fire, Mid-South was worse because we just traveled more miles. I mean, an average trip was 400 miles round trip.
Wow.
500 miles round trip was, not unusual either. We all lived in Alexandria, Louisiana, because we were about 200 to 250 miles away from everywhere. The only place we flew would be Oklahoma City and Tulsa. We'd fly out of, we'd fly a little commuter plane up and fly that trip because it was so far. But everywhere else we drove, it was probably, 3,000 mile weeks for kind of the norm.
Wow.
And then when I got to the Mid-Atlantic, again, North Carolina, South Carolina, into Virginia, we had some long trips, but when we had a longer trip, we typically stayed over somewhere, went on to another town the next day. Whereas in Mid-South, we hardly ever stayed over because the next day we were usually, 250 miles in the opposite direction of where we'd started. So you couldn't stay over. It didn't make sense. But they were similar, in some degree. Mid-South definitely longer. But then when we popped the territory and we started flying everywhere, the game just completely changed then, because then we were going all over the country.
Yeah. That to me is something that I've heard other wrestlers talk about as far as the travel. Do you think that was there more thought put behind the shows in Mid-Atlantic, or do you think it was just that's how it had to be in Mid-South? There was just no way around that.
Yeah, I think it was just the way it was laid out. I mean, I don't think they took threw darts at a board to try to figure out what towns to book, because I mean we would work the same towns, basically every month. I mean, it was a circuit that you were working because we were working 7 days a week, but nonetheless, because we did our television taping in Shreveport and at the Irish McGill's Boys Center, and and that was not optional, and that was there. Just nothing was centralized about it. When you're covering, we're going into Texas, we're going into Houston, and a couple of those towns over on that side of Texas, the smaller towns, and then all the way across. I mean, the way Louisiana's laid out, it's demographics. So you've got to go where you got enough population to draw a decent house, and it was just spread out as all get out.
So, I mean, you get there into Jim Crockett and you end up with Wahoo McDaniel. Wahoo is actually the first match I think I ever saw. It was him on TV, probably a late 85, early 86. And this was the first wrestling match that I remember. I remember promos a lot, like Ric Flair, I remember a lot of the powerful promos. But when it came down to the actual in-ring stuff, Wahoo, I think, is the first person I remember seeing and paying attention to. Talk about Wahoo. I mean, one of the toughest, right?
Well, he was a legend, because I grew up watching Mid-Atlantic too. I'm from Chesapeake, Virginia. Yeah. And so those were my earliest memories of television. And my first match that I remember to this day was watching Wahoo McDaniels and Johnny Valentine fighting for the Silver Dollar Challenge, when they had like $500 worth of silver dollars in a fishbowl. They beat each other to death. I mean, it was so physical and brutal that I was like, oh my gosh, man, somebody hit me like that, I'd break in a million pieces. Not knowing that I would be, trading blows with this guy, 10 years down the road. But I was a huge fan of his, and it was a weird angle to launch, in a territory with, because Wahoo was not like some dastardly heel that, a cowardly heel, or, he might do something and give you a cheap shot or what like that, but he was just a big, rough, rugged, tough son of a gun. that everybody respected, even as the fans, whether they cheered him or they booed him. He never had, like heat, like a Tully Blanchard. He just wasn't that kind of heel. So for me to go and have the fans, get behind me and be there, and we had our U.S. title match inside of the steel cage in the old, Charlotte Coliseum, now the Bojangles, and sold out crowd, 11,000 people, and the people were just magic. They were so into the match, and I mean, he passed the torch to me there right in the middle of the ring with the belly to belly 1, 2, 3, and and it was a moment that I'll never forget because of my respect for him, what he meant to the industry, his heritage in pro football, just everything. I mean, I felt like I was out there with, probably like Hogan felt when he was out there with Andre.
Yeah. You are the United States heavyweight champion.
The one and only.
The only. Yeah. I was telling a friend of mine the other day, I was like, that title, the U.S. title, every time I see it, I think they should just call it Magnum's title, the Magnum title. Because, I mean, I tell Luger that every time I see him. There you go. Especially Luger. Come on, man. I guess not to get too far ahead, but, they've obviously kept somewhat the lineage of that United States title on up into the WWE. I'm not sure where it deviates or if it even does deviate. I know that they have a little bit of weird history on their side of, like where things start and end. But to me, I mean, back then that was the title that was going to set you up basically for the world's title. I wish that there was that kind of thing now with titles, because I felt like it was such a no-brainer that it was eventual, okay, now he's got the U.S. title. That means he's automatically number one contender for the world. That was so important. And I feel like that's something they just don't do enough of these days.
No, and it's a different time, a different era, a different audience. They've been programmed differently. But specifically when the NWA was what it was, that title was automatically, instantly, you became the U.S. champion. You were considered the number one challenger for the world's heavyweight title. End of story. I mean, that's what that title meant. I mean, and so, Wahoo had it, and Roddy Piper had it, Ricky Steamboat had it, Jimmy Snuka had it. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Sure.
And that wasn't like, say the Mid-Atlantic title or the,
right.
I can't think of other titles, but I don't think WWE ever got their Intercontinental title to mean to their world's title what the U.S. title meant, and then NWA to the world's heavyweight title.
I totally agree with that. Absolutely.
Welcome to the Monster Movie Stomp Down, where twice a month we review monster movies from all corners of the planet. Join me, Sludge.
I went to watch it the other night, and she's like, "Why are you watching this? You can quote this movie line for line." Like, that's very accurate.
My co-host, Mark.
Don't ask me to do a stomp down on this because it's 0.
Okay, dude. Ruben, what's your stomp down rate?
And our brother from Texas, Ruben.
It's just, I'm like, wait a minute. They tricked me into watching this.
Yeah, that's what I felt like.
As we give you the history, our review, and the stomp down rating of some of the best and worst monster movies around. Available through the Podbean app, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Amazon. Make sure and check us out on Facebook and Instagram.
If you're a pro wrestling fan, there's something for everyone at the Cheap Heat TV Podcast Network. From the Pro Wrestling Discussion Show, Cheap Heat TV Live, to the interview show, the Jackson Interaction Podcast with the king of all wrestling media, Gene Jackson, to the silliness of the Whitey Jenkins Show, and the brand new Zip, Xander's Irresistible Podcast with Charles Anders. You can check them all out and much more over at CheapHeatTVLive.com.
Magnum, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. One of the greatest matches. I don't remember it from when I was young. I was 4 at the time, but after watching it,
there's no excuse.
After watching it back, your I Quit match with Tully Blanchard at Starrcade 85 has got to be one of the greatest matches I've ever watched. And people look at that card, and it had Dusty and Flair And the I Quit match is the one that people remember. You all had such chemistry in the ring, and it was worked perfectly with you, the babyface, and him, the heel. And just talk a little bit about that match.
Well, Tully and I had known each other almost since I broke in. I went to work for his dad, Joe, 6 months in the business, and we met there. And I was really young and really green, but I remember him telling me that he never wanted to be anything but the best heel in the world. He wanted to be the best heel. He didn't say the best champion. He wanted to be the best heel. He was never one of those guys that had some inner side of him that secretly wanted to get the cheers. He wanted the boos. He wanted to be hated. He wanted to be that nasty guy that everybody wanted to see him get his butt kicked. Yeah. And so when we got the opportunity after I had gone and really honed my skills and gotten ready to perform on that level, we were instantly attracted to the idea of what we could do together, and I know he petitioned for it because he knew that there was a huge opportunity. And that I Quit match was the end of an 8-month feud, 8 months. Oh, wow. And so telling a story week in, week out, battles up, down, every which way you could possibly be. I win the title from Wahoo in the Coliseum in Charlotte. I defend against Tully, who had Baby Doll come down to the ring dressed as a police officer, slip him a roll of quarters. He knocks me out when the referee doesn't see it. Quarters go everywhere, and he gets the title. And we fought week in, week out, 7 days a week, 8 months straight. All the things we did in between till we got down to that match. And we had so many epic matches. I'll be honest with you. Had they had cameras everywhere we went, I would just about bet you that we had matches in arenas for fans somewhere that equaled that or were even way better.
Wow. I just got chills.
Yeah.
Just to know that, So I know that during this time there was the I Quit match at Starrcade and stuff like that, but also, and there's a rumor that's come about later on in the more modern era that Dusty was actually talking about the possibility of there being a movie about you or movie with you. Do you remember? Have you heard talk of this? I'm sure you have, but.
Oh, we had visions of things that nobody knew anything about, obviously. But he'd written a screenplay with a movie for me to be riding my motorcycle across country on this adventure. And I was going to have this animated conscience named Gus, a little mouse that would appear like on my shoulder. And Gus would be kind of like the devil on your shoulder, not really an angel. And he had written a whole screenplay. He had a whole story, had a whole thing. And because the wrestling thing, as we were doing it then, as grand as it was not even remotely the end game of where Dusty wanted to go and what he believed that I could do with him.
Yeah. Was there even a rumor that maybe Sylvester Stallone playing you, or were you going to play you?
No, this was before my accident. No, this is me being in the movie.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, this wasn't a story about my life. This was a Cecil B. DeMille's moment of Dusty's wanting us to go to Hollywood.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That makes sense. So, another thing, that best of 7 with Nikita, I feel like in a way, beyond the years, a lot of people have kind of gotten negative on Nikita a little, whether it was the Russian accent that he kept going or things like that. But honestly, we thought Nikita was a monster. We thought of Nikita in such reverence. Now, I've met Nikita later on. Great man, really just really pleasant, nice man to meet. He has a strong faith. And to me, meeting him, it was just like this monster, but he was a real man, But you guys also had some great chemistry. So
great, and so it's so you're really fortunate when anybody looks back on a career, whether your career was 7 years long or 37 years long, to have like defining moments that people will still talk about, 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And of course, the I Quit match is the hands down number one thing people talk about. But the second to it is definitely the Best of 7 series. And it's so special to me for a number of reasons. But first of all, it was the first time that I was in a program with somebody that I was the veteran. I was the veteran. I was the lead. I was the general. I was the guy that everybody's looking to make sure that this thing was, not just good, but spectacular. Yeah. And Nikita was, as far as intensity goes, and I was intense. Nikita was my equal in intensity as a heel. Yeah. And he was 290 pounds. I mean, big, monster, menacing, everything. He didn't have all the polish and things that, somebody, who'd been working on top for years would have, but he was so believable and his stuff was so good. Nobody ever looked at it and said, "Oh, well, I don't think that hurt," because everything was very, very, very solid. So for me, that body of work that I had so much responsibility in, and it was really, we had some outstanding matches in that Best of 7. Some of them went 30 and 45 minutes long. Yeah. That I've got a lot of pride in that, because I feel like that really proved to me and to the world that I could, it's easy to go out there and dance with somebody that's an expert. But if you go out with somebody that's not and make it look that good, then that's what it's all about.
While we're still talking about it, in that case, now we hear a lot, I listen to Ric Flair's podcast, and Ric Flair talks about, okay, I called this match, or, I let this person call. Now, I don't think Ric let many people call matches, but in that regard, who's calling that match between you and?
I led all those matches.
Yeah, I figured so.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, we didn't have to talk that much, but if the tempo was going wrong, if I need to be in a certain place at a certain time, or he need to get more heat or whatever, I was making sure that chemistry and that story was being told. And it wasn't like the day of, laying out a match like these guys do today. I mean, we were doing this improvisationally on the fly every night. We never had a plan outside of what the outcome was. There wasn't anything talked about prior to us going out there and doing it. So that's what made it even more special, because, again, that was the craft and the art of it. Back then, it wasn't, a high spot, fiasco of 5,000 things happening that at the end of the day, everybody just gets up and walks off like, they got hit by a butterfly.
Seriously. Yeah.
So, again, it was that kind of thing. And that's where I felt like I had learned enough of the lessons I need to learn to be able to go out there and do that with pretty much anybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I know that a lot of people see like Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, the Four Horsemen, everybody back in that time cutting a great promo. I feel like sometimes you get overlooked, but you had such a fiery promo, and I feel like it could always be maybe intimidating being around like Flair or Dusty giving a promo. How did you get past that, or was it were you just comfortable with it? And
I was comfortable with my delivery and felt, I felt very good about it. I mean, you wouldn't ever go out there with, when Dusty and I were tag teaming, you'd be stupid to go out there and try to out Dusty. I mean, that's just, it's one thing when heel's cutting a promo and then you're coming back and you're, giving a response, obviously you can let it fly then. But when you're out there sharing a mic with, Dusty Rhodes, who arguably is the greatest wrestling promo in the history of the business, then you've got to stay in your lane and do what's complementary to it and have your believability be on par with what his is. But you don't try to out talk You know, I mean, I could say things that would mess him up, and I didn't do it on purpose, but I would do it because I just knew it would make him think, you know, because he was always like that. I remember one time coming out, we're on TBS, and I said something about there's a lot of variables in this circumstance. And he looked at me and said, "What are variables?" Variables. But, you know, it was like it was fun, and Dusty and I were just such great friends that. Those times were all just fun to me. You know, I mean, I wasn't out there trying to be in a contest. Like I said, I know my work in the ring combined with the fact that, you know, I said what I meant and I did what I said I was going to do when I got in there was telling the story I wanted to tell.
Yeah. On a little bit of a lighter note, I remember there was a tag team, the James Boys, that was feuding with the Midnight Express. Did they ever find out who those guys were?
No, I think they're out in Colorado somewhere, still running roughshod, and have yet to be found.
I've looked for interviews and podcasts about them, and it's just like they really went totally under the radar. It was just, you know, they were there and then they weren't.
You know. Well, you know, they're lucky that they probably did ride off into the sunset, because had they resumed their reign of terror, it could have changed the whole wrestling landscape, because they played by a different set of rules.
They did. They did. Absolutely. You know, speaking of those guys, and then, of course, you were talking about Dusty there. Talk about those awesome fur coats. I'm just saying, those were amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't really fit your gimmick totally, but it did too. You know, does that make sense?
Well, you know, it was just like, so, yeah, we were all in Vegas, and Flair was running around being Flair, and we were all being the boys, and Dusty and I, you know, happened to like stroll by this fur shop, Ray Lenoble Furs, and there's pictures in there of all these pro boxers that he made coats for, and Liberace, and I mean, just the list goes on and on. And Dusty said, "You know what?" He said, "We ought to just go in here, get fixed up, and just shut that Flair up first and foremost." And so we go in, and I think there was a little alcohol involved. And then the next thing I know, that these Furrier guys have flown from Vegas to Charlotte, North Carolina, to fit us for these coats they're making for us. That, oh, by the way, cost $7,200 a piece in 1985, which was a whole lot of money back then.
Oh yes, absolutely, yeah.
But they were unique, and it's so funny seeing them on the internet, because I think that meme's so funny. It said, "You may be cool, but you're not just cool."
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, because it's honestly so true. It takes a certain kind of man. I'm just going to say it. And I'm not sure I'm that man. Takes a certain kind of man to pull off a fur coat and still believe that he could knock your teeth out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, we come from that John Wayne mentality.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, I love it. And our father is a big John Wayne fan. So obviously we were raised on the Searchers and the Rio Bravo. Those are great.
True Grit.
True Grit. Cannot fan. Rooster Cogburn. Yeah, those are great. We love those. You know, okay, so obviously Jared talked about the fiery promos and stuff like that. And, you know, it seems like today, where everything is so scripted and planned out for the guys, that it doesn't really seem that they get the opportunity to really show that they can give those kinds of promos, even if they have the ability or not. What could they do today to allow for that to happen? I mean, if you were a guy coming up today, would you just try to do it the same way? Or
I don't know. I really don't know. I think Triple H is giving some of those that he knows have that kind of ability, some leeway a little bit to, you know, I mean, like, you know, Edge can obviously, you know,
oh yeah, totally
can deliver, you know, like none other, you know, and and Randy Orton, same thing. I mean, there's guys there that have those skill sets. I understand why they control the narrative the way they do, or they control the things that they do, because I understand enough about production now and things of why it's so important that they know what's going to happen, because what they do with their product is like I went down and watched a taping that they did in North Carolina a couple of years ago, and I watched it, and it was just it was like it's like I watched a C, but I would have called a C show back in the day. Yeah. And I came home and watched it on TV because it was being shown that night. And what I saw on TV was 100% different than what I had witnessed in the arena, because of the camera angles, the things that they captured, the zoom ins where they got expressions on people's faces and stuff. And so they've made an art form out of it. They're making a movie that they then turn into a product. They come and they do it great. It doesn't translate the same watching it live as it does what it comes across. And that's where they make their bread and butter, where we were the exact opposite. TV was the advertising tool to get people to come into the arenas to pay their money to get the fruits of our labor, in the arenas. And now it's all turned around. So I get why they did what they did, but somehow marrying up the skill set so guys can find, a character that they're comfortable in, and that they can make their own, and certainly can't turn them loose to just go do something, especially on live television, that could, mess up your sponsors and this and that. I mean, so many things could go wrong. I can't even count, if you had no earthly idea. But to that point, like I was calling a match with Jim Ross back in the day for WCW. And they didn't do things like they do today. They just went out and had these matches, and it was a match with all I remember was Sting and the Steiners, and I don't know if Luger was in it or not, but they did a spot, and the Steiners were out on the floor, and it was Rick, and he was backed all the way up to the barricade, and Sting ran and jumped from the middle of the ring, cleared the top rope probably by 4 or 5 feet, and went all the way to the floor where Steiner caught him and took a bump. And it was it was like watching Michael Jordan or something, the athleticism, what took place, and the director missed the whole shot. Because he didn't know what was going to happen. Right. I mean, because I was watching this saying, oh my gosh, I mean, I just witnessed something that I'm selling like $1 million that nobody got to see if you weren't in the arena. Right. And when you're talking about 10,000 people seeing it or 10 million people seeing it, that's kind of a no-brainer that you want to make sure that the 10 million see what they're supposed to see.
Sure. TV ratings, commercials, ads, all that. Yeah. So 1987, that was your year, right? That was going to be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's all pretty much well known and assumed that you were with the rocket on your back, literally gonna go and have the title. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I mean, we've heard about your accident. It happened. Obviously, things happen that alter our lives, but we like to play a little bit of what if. We knew that Flair kept the title for a long time because Flair was willing to travel to Japan, Puerto Rico, Texas. He was willing to work the entire territory, or the entire United States, as it were, with that title. I mean, obviously, you being focused on Mid-Atlantic and Jim Crockett really at that time, but would you have also just taken on that mantle and gone with it like he did?
Well, see, it was a different game. So there's a couple dynamics that the general public doesn't really see. And I think Rick's actually forgot, because I've heard him talk about it sometimes. Yeah. So the 10 pounds of gold, which was to me the last real true world's heavyweight title, was the NWA belt. Okay. Right. When the Crockett's, when the big gold came about, the big gold didn't say NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. It said World's Heavyweight Champion. Right. Because they had to give the NWA 10% of the gate. I mean, 3%. The champion got 10%. The NWA got 3%. So 13% of your gate's gone. Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
so there was so when it started, yes, I was just in Jim Crockett Promotions, but then when we became worldwide, then every country, every city in the United States was in our territory. We're wrestling in Chicago one night, in LA the next night, New Orleans the next night, or we were bouncing around like Super Balls because we're going on planes.
Yeah.
So the only thing that Flair had been doing was going, like to New Zealand or going to, Japan, or, as far as going out, there was no other territories by that point in time. Jim Crockett was the world.
Okay,
so,
gotcha.
So a couple of things. So then, had I been carrying the mantle and that title for the Crockett's, they would have completely dictated everywhere I went and everything that I did. There would be no conflict of, interest of, do we let our champion go here? Do we do there? Because they would be controlling every show the champion was on.
Right.
So it'd been different, because I heard Rick say, Magnum would have need to, go work some of these other places and But I think he's forgotten, it wasn't like, he wasn't going to all those places anymore either. Back in 86, he was up until 85. But when that thing changed, he wasn't going all over the world anymore. He was going where Jimmy booked him.
Gotcha.
It was a different game, because we ran all the little guys out of business. I mean, they couldn't compete, and and I was supposed to go to Japan in February of 87 anyway. I was going with the Crockett stuff. Again, they weren't just letting Magnum be gone anywhere for 2 weeks or 2 days, let alone 2 weeks to go somewhere and have everything, in limbo. So we were taking a tour over there as a company.
Yeah. That's cool. I just feel like, we actually have a series that we do. We just recently kicked it off with in our opinion, how Sting and Hogan should have finished with the NWO deal. But, you were on our plate of a what if series, and it's great we're getting to actually do the what if with you. Do you feel like, obviously 87 would have been yours. I know that the WCW, when Turner took it over, it went into fluctuation.
I don't think I would have gone to WCW.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
I think that would have been the segue, because my allegiance was to Jimmy and Dusty.
Yeah.
And that was the minute the Crockett's were not, it wasn't the Crockett family, unless they had offered me, some astronomical amount of money.
Yeah.
It would have to been like, I'm talking like $7 to $10 million kind of money. I would not been intrigued by somebody, trying to run the wrestling business rather than somebody who was an expert at running the wrestling business, like, the WWE was.
Right. That makes total sense. And that you read my mind, actually, which is awesome. So I didn't know you had that ability as well.
If you're a fan of rock music, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to check out my podcast. It's called the Decibel Geek Podcast. We've been doing it for about 10 years now. We talk about Kiss. We talk about Ozzy. We talk about Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses and Metallica. We talk about all the legends from the 60s and on, up to brand new bands that you should be hearing about today that you're not going to hear on the radio. It's Decibel Geek. Wherever you find your podcasts, you'll find us there. If you love rock and roll, I can almost guarantee you're going to love my show.
In a world that has been completely divided for so long, two movie fans have decided to unite for the people and the betterment of mankind. One, an action movie buff. The other, a horror movie fanatic. Together, they will try to bridge the gap of both genres into one podcast with their battle cry, "Give me back my action and horror movies." Listen along as Charlie and Nate alternate each week talking about action and horror movies they cherish, mostly from the VHS era. Also, including some modern examples that felt like the movies they grew up with by answering the battle cry. Give me back my action and horror movies. Available wherever you listen to podcasts. Look them up on Facebook and Instagram.
Action figure.
So we know you led into that, and then, of course, things changed for you and altered your life. But one thing that has also come into your life recently is Steve Rosenthal and Greg Gagne. Talk about PowerTown with us a little bit.
So it was a year ago, last June, I get a call from Greg Gagne, who I've known for many years and wrestled for his dad in Comiskey Park against Flair, as a matter of fact, back in the day. And he says, hey, this group of guys that I know from back in the 80s that are wrestling figures for us, are putting together this company. They want to do blah, 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 blah. And would you be interested in letting us do some unique wrestling memorabilia for you to license me? And I listened to what they had to say, and it sounded good. And I said, sure. I said, I'm on board. Yeah. So I signed up, and so they could make a figure of me or whatever memorabilia stuff they wanted to do. And then Greg, kept, we hit it off really good on the phone. It's like we, had just seen each other yesterday. And he was asking me questions about this guy and that guy, and then talking to me a little bit about their business plans and their model. And I've been involved in so many business things over the last 30 years that I've accrued a little bit of background and knowledge myself, and I started sharing with him. And he said, I think I need to get you on the phone with Steve. And so he introduced me to Steve Rosenthal, and we started talking, and Steve said, you got a lot of value add. I think that you have to offer. I'd like to offer you an equity position in the company. And I said, well, and I was really flattered. I didn't know really what that meant at the time. But anyway, so I took that role, I think, maybe 2 months after they had initially called me. And, been helping them, grow the roster, but also strategize the business plan and what we're going to do with the company. And it's been a slow process because although all the principals have a tremendous amount of background and influence, it's still like starting up a startup company because it's something that didn't exist. I mean, Steve had been retired. All these guys that are on board, like I said, have a wealth of litany background from what they've done to be successful in their respective businesses. And but again, we just all came together as a team, about 14, 15 months ago, and we have finally got in a position to have things launched and product in the pipeline now being produced, and we've got a little over 200 people on the roster to produce memorabilia for.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm a big collector of action figures, and so I've already got the PowerTown Series 1 pre-ordered, and so I'm looking forward to that. I'm amazed at how well these figures look. Like you've had Mattel and the AEW company Jazzwares, I think, that do the figures, and to see these as a third company producing high quality and maybe higher quality action figures than those two companies is amazing to me, and I'm really excited for that. What are your, I guess, Greg kind of dropped some names to us the other day, and I was just wondering, like, can you drop us some names, like who's possibly down the pipeline with that maybe you've brought on to this venture?
A name I could drop.
Or two or three.
I've dropped a few. Well, I mean, and I want there to be, because we're going to have releases and we're going to be producing things and whatnot on them. Let's just say that there is going to be a more adequate representation of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Okay.
And then there'll be some people that you'll have to do some research to realize what their impact was on the industry.
Sure.
But, you know, for instance, my very good friend, Barry Windham. Barry Windham and his dad are a part of this.
Wow.
And we, you know, I'm not going to name all the families that we have, but we're going to do series on families.
Yeah.
That have, so it's not just, you know, there's different approaches for this thing, but we're going to do some things that have never been done before. And we're trying to do things the right way too. We've entered into an agreement with Dave Milliken, who took over the Reggie Parks licensed belts.
Yeah.
So, you know, so we're not just, you know, we're not doing this, you know, just on the fly. I mean, you know, my belt and Kerry Von Erich's belt that are going to be the figures are belts that Reggie Parks created himself and had those licensed. So we've done the same. We've reached out and entered into agreement with him, and we not just for the authenticity, but everybody that was truly a contributor in the industry is due their due for just like the performers. And part of the reason for this is, you know, of course, a business has got to be successful, or it benefits no one. So we got to make a good product, and it's got to be quality, and there's got to be decent margins in there to cover all these extra steps we're going into to make sure we're giving you the best product. But we're trying to afford people that were never part of this new generation, that never had, you know, action figures or never had memorabilia or didn't get the worldwide recognition that they really are due, because they were before cable television and much less the internet. Bring those people's stories back into the modern era, because there's characters that laid the bricks in this road for this thing we now enjoy as, you know, wrestling entertainment, that were some of the craziest characters you've ever come across in your life, and their stories are crazier than what you could, if you were trying to dream something up, you couldn't dream these up. I mean, they were real. They really were real life, you know, superheroes and wild, eccentric people, and it's intriguing. You know, just hearing all these backstories. So we want to share a lot of that, and we're trying to build a platform that will allow us to do that through our website that we're building and podcasts that we're doing and things of that nature.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Y'all are doing a fabulous job, and I'm, you know, excited to get like Luthez and Vern Gagne and any others that are before my time. But it's also exciting to see people in the 80s timeline that were really a part of my childhood and my beginning of love of wrestling.
Isn't it funny, the memories?
I tell you,
these things stir up. I tell you, the visuals that come to mind when you see these things, and it takes you right back to a time. You remember something with your family. You remember, I mean, things vividly that these you know, associations trigger. I mean, it does it for me. I mean, I've got my youngest son has just started amateur wrestling, and I've been going with him to his wrestling practice and watching the drills and watching the expressions on his face and watching that physical, you know, struggle trying to learn these new things. And it had taken me back to a place that I forgot about, you know, back in the 70s, like in a time capsule. And the wrestling does the same thing. So when people see you, you know, at a fan fest or convention or something and start talking about something, you know, it's tying back their whole family roots and, you know, just an amazing part of their lives that were all, you know, intertwined in what we did to come into their homes and entertain them.
Oh, completely. And that's actually what this whole show is based upon, is my brother and my nostalgia and the fact of give me back my pro wrestling. It's not necessarily like this, really hard tone that we take with that title. What we mean is, we want to bring our wrestling back and share it with what we think the world would like to hear in this sense. And you are pretty much one of the examples of give me back my pro wrestling, because we want the world to give us back our Magnum TA and give us back our Greg Gagne and Vern Gagne and Jim Crockett Promotions and fun stuff like that. So you kind of are one of the shining examples of this podcast and what we're trying to do. So, you coming on here has been a huge pleasure of ours for sure. Do you have anything coming up that you would like to tell anybody about?
Well, my thrust right now is to try to collaborate with our team to see what we're going to bring out next, and then expound on the things that we're bringing to the table, other avenues and other things to offer from the brand for the people we have on board, because the action figure piece of it is just one element of what our plans are for these these individuals that we represent and the ways we want to retell these stories. So we certainly got just more emotional energy than I can tell you invested in the action figure part of it, but
right.
it takes a lot. It's like birthing babies times 3, I think, what it takes to bring this to reality. And then your stork is over there on the other side of the world, and you've got to go through all the logistical hoops of getting it to you so that you can have it distributed. So I'm not going to breathe easily until this whole first series is safely in the hands of all the people that have already come forward and signed up for the pre-orders, and the people that'll want to fulfill orders when we have inventory in stock and all that kind of good stuff. When I see all that start flowing, not that I'm going to be able to go to sleep at the wheel, but at least I'll be able to say, okay, now we just need to repeat.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I hope very soon that we'll be able to have that initial Jim Crockett match of yours with the listeners out there. I hope they'll be able to have a Magnum TA Wahoo McDaniel match in their living room. So we hope.
Well, if I got anything to say about it, they will. And Wahoo, and yes, Wahoo is on board, and there is nobody more beloved by me in the industry than what he contributed, what he did, what he meant to me personally, and for someone to be of that magnitude and not be heralded more than he has been by the entire industry, to me is just bizarre, because it's like talking about baseball and not celebrating Babe Ruth. I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, before I let you go here, when are we going to see Tessa again? Really miss watching her wrestle. She's actually one of my favorite current wrestlers.
Well, thank you. Well, Tessa is currently a full-time college student.
Awesome.
In San Antonio. So Tessa is not only gifted and talented and beautiful and an accomplished wrestler, she's got a very smart head on those shoulders, and she realizes that she needs an education and some things to be able to do after she doesn't want to bounce around in the ring like a Super Bowl. So she's working on getting her degree and still wrestling on the circuit on the weekends. And she's just kind of taking her journey the way, she wants to, kind of in stride. She's not putting pressure on herself. It's such a commitment to go all in, to say, hey, I'm ready to do this full time at whatever age it is in your life, because you're going to sacrifice something in doing that, whether it's your family, whether it's investing in your future education, something. There's sacrifices you're going to be made. So the guys that can come through, have some kind of professional training, in life to fall back on after the game's over, are really the smart people in the room today. Because back when, and for and probably for about 90% of the people that have come through the world of professional wrestling, there was no plan B.
Right.
If they didn't make it in that industry, or even if they did make it, there was no retirement plan, there was no exit strategy, there was no nothing. It was just, oh my gosh, I was a superstar, I was on television, I was a celebrity, and now I'm not, and now what do I do?
Yeah.
And that's a frightful place to be without somebody having taken you by the hand and guided you a little bit. And it wasn't anybody that did that in the past. I'm hoping that they have some life coaches running around there in the WWE helping people prepare for the future today. But back then they didn't. So that's what Tessa's doing. She's working for her future. She's happily married and got a great husband who's also a wrestler and an amazing athlete in and of his own right. So we'll see. She's just 26 years old. So
it's crazy.
World ahead of her.
I mean, as much as I miss seeing her on TV, because I mean that when I say that, she's literally one of my favorite pro wrestlers right now. So with that being said, who can blame her for that? That's a genius. And she's only 26. So like you said, she's got the world for sure. So I can't wait to see what's in front of her.
Yeah, physically, she's in the best shape of her life, and she's only going to continue to maintain that. She'll graduate from college and be in better shape she's ever been, and have her head screwed on even better, and see what the landscape looks like then. Because just face it, there's a great women's division in the WWE, and I always would have loved to see her and Charlotte work a match. And that's still, as long as they're both in good health, that's something that will always be on the table for the future, I'm sure, if they were both willing. So
who's the heel in that one?
Tessa is a heel. She can talk and she can smile, but she's got enough of her dad's genes in her DNA that her natural propensity, her movements, her antics, everything in the ring is a heel. Yeah, she's not a baby face. She just she'll try to be, but she just that's not what she's cut out to be.
Yeah, well, so you hear that, Charlotte Flair, Tessa is the heel. So well, I can't wait to see that match. I feel like the inevitability of that happening was written in the stars. So Magnum, again, thank you so much for giving us your time and coming on the show. Obviously, you're welcome back anytime. If you ever want to come back on and talk more PowerTown, talk a little bit about what's coming out just in the future or whatever, obviously the door is wide open for you. Jared, do you have anything you'd like to say before we?
I just appreciate coming on and talking to us and giving us some insight to your career and what's up and coming with PowerTown.
Well, thank you, guys. It's really been a pleasure.
Magnum, you're the best. And honestly, when I say that, you are one of our favorites of all time. Absolutely. So thank you so much. Well, for Magnum TA, for the Plastic Sheik, Jared, this is Jimmy Street. You've been listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. We'll be right back.
Figure sold separately.
Man, what do you think about that? We just talked to Magnum. We just talked to the United States heavyweight champion, Magnum TA, man. What do you think of that?
Man, it was such an honor to talk to somebody like Magnum, such a super nice guy.
Yeah.
All the people with PowerTown, Steve, Greg, and now Magnum, they've just been nothing but open to us and just talking to us. They don't owe us anything, but they were so nice to give us their time and to give us their stories.
Oh, totally. PowerTownWrestling.com. Go get what you need there. The first series is out, up for pre-order right now. Man, I'm excited to see all those. Now, again, Jared, you're the collector of the show, so obviously that's on you, buddy. But when I see you and I'm at your house, I'm going to be looking at these hardcore. We'll figure out how to do some kind of review, even if it's just audio where you can talk about each one or something. We'll have fun with that. But in that regard, though, we talked mostly about Magnum's career. Now, obviously, I didn't want to just like jump into the accident thing because I feel like so many people have talked about the specifics of that. And I just didn't really feel like it was necessary because that's just unfortunately something that somebody knows about Magnum, So I thought turn it to a positive because I've heard so many times that Ron Garvin got the title run that Magnum would have had. Now, people hated on Ron for that. And I mean, at the time it was fine. We loved it because it wasn't on Flair. And even though in my teen years, I began to love and appreciate Flair, and now Flair's like a global icon. But at the time, I was happy that Ron Garvin beat Flair, but it was not Magnum TA,
Yeah.
Love Ron Garvin. Hands of stone. I mean, but at the same time, man, was not TA. That's all I can say. So,
yeah, I mean, with Magnum, I always think about, how big could Crockett have been? Would Crockett have stayed in the game? Would they have sold out to Turner? What would have happened if Magnum had stayed healthy and been that champion, been that answer kind of to Hulkamania a little bit that they were looking for. They had the perfect heel champion with Flair, and they were flush with heels with the Four Horsemen, but they could have used that baby face, and they got it a few years later with Sting.
Yeah,
but it was already basically in the hands of Turner at that time. So
right, and that was interesting to hear him say that he would not have gone with Turner. So you know what that means.
Yeah,
I mean, there's only a couple options. If you're not going with Turner and you're going to continue to be a professional wrestler, then you're going to go to the indies or the lower territories that really weren't, or he was going to the WWE. I mean,
what could he have went to? Maybe Memphis or AWA. AWA was struggling at the time a little bit, I think. So
he could have popped that territory. Obviously, Memphis would have been great for him. But, obviously Turner taking over the NWA, and then or Jim Crockett, I should say, Turner taking over the Jim Crockett Promotions, that left a huge gap in something that was holding the NWA together. I mean, there were other places he could have gone, but obviously Mid-South was already closed by that point with the UWF, and, World Class was on its last dying days. It was about to turn into USWA soon, and, AWA was in its dying days. I know the Rock and Roll Express went up there a little bit after they left Crockett, but it would have been the WWF. I have no doubt in my mind that Vince would have done an amazing. Now, would he have done it correctly? Who knows? Would Magnum have received some lame gimmick? Who knows? But I'm just thinking, Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, theoretically, you could have seen Magnum come in and it could have been totally different after that, So,
well, Magnum could have got that Warrior spot though, too.
Exactly. That's what I'm leading to. Basically. Yeah. Magnum could have easily had that Warrior spot, and then boom, boom, boom. So, like I said, I wanted to allude to a possible what if, and it might be cool if we can get old Magnum involved in that what if. Don't want to promise too much, but don't want to not shoot for the stars. We're shooting so far and doing okay. So, we are going to get back to topic-based shows soon. We've just had some amazing opportunities with interviews coming through. So anybody that questions why we took a Greg Gagne and Magnum TA interview, just turn it off. Right?
You might be on the wrong podcast then.
Yeah, just unfollow, and it's okay. We appreciate you though. Thank you.
But leave a 5-star review on your way out.
Definitely. And that leads me to this: rate and review. Please give us 5 stars if you think we deserve it. If you don't. but at the same time, we definitely appreciate you for doing that. Also, follow us at GMBMPW on all these social media things. We've got some cool things dropping. We've got YouTube shorts. The Sheik shorts are always there for you. So we're going to have some more of those, get those going again. We've kind of, we were having some issues with copyright claims and on YouTube. And once you get so many of those, it can kind of sting you and hurt your future on YouTube. So we're playing it cool in certain areas, right, Sheik? But we're going to get back on those. I think we've figured out some options that are going to help us keep the Sheik shorts going. So anyway, we'll talk about that another time, but keep it up. Jablonski's pissed off. That new segment drop is going to be coming soon. Also, more shows down the pipeline. We love y'all. Sheik, we love them, right?
We love you all. Thank you all for tuning in, and stay with us because we hope to have more exciting things coming in the future.
Yeah, and more exciting things are in the future. That's what we should say, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So just keep an eye on us, keep us in your favorites, and we'll take good care of you. We promise. Thank you all so much for listening. Once again, for the Plastic Sheik Jared, for Magnum TA, this is Jimmy across the street. Thank you all for listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Don't forget,
fight forever.
With a tear in my eye. This is the greatest moment in my life.
This has been a James Rock Street production.